Michelle Thompson will be here a little bit late. She still is working, so she will join us when she gets here. So the last time we met, we started, if you remember, we started with this document. Do you want me to make some copies so that you have? It's kind of helpful to be able to look through it and line it out.
I know I forgot my copy.
Thank you.
I wasn't
How many you want?
unfortunate.
So we're using the 2015 format just because the board liked the way it was laid out. They don't have an expectation that we're copying and pasting into the new document, but they just like the format. But we decided at the last meeting that we would go through the goals and activities that were in there and talk about whether or not they're still relevant and where they fit in the document. So this is just a draft kind of based on what we discussed at the last meeting. So the cover page, this is just a draft. Michelle hasn't even looked at it yet. Hey, how are you, Christine?
Good.
So we have to go through that, but and then these are our participants, but so I can add to, I can't add. I need to add. So Maria, would it be helpful to you if we go around the table and just introduce ourselves so you can put the list of participants?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we have Trustee Bain.
Spirit and CFO.
Lynn Pasley, Assistant Superintendent.
Christine Corey, parent.
Amy Camp, grandparent.
Celeste Sutton, parent.
We will add Christine and Celeste.
Feels like I could be just community member, but I'm more than
You're
one
both.
of
Yeah, you're more than
Okay, so and then I'll just keep adding participants who come, and then our school board is it 2024, our buildings and the administrators, and then we'll fill in what page things should end up on when we're finally done. But so the first part, the right work, is what we kind of decided on, and these were the things that we felt was the right work in Lakeland. So educators work in collaborative teams and take responsibility for student learning rather than working in isolation. Collaborative teams implement a guaranteed and viable curriculum unit by unit. Collaborative teams monitor student learning through an ongoing assessment process that includes frequent team-developed common formative assessments. And then educators use the results of common assessments to improve individual practices, build grade level department teams' capacities to achieve their goals, and intervene or enrich, whoops, there's a typo right there, on behalf. Thank you.
You want me to get you one, Randy?
Yeah, I can't reach that. You just throw them at me. Thanks, Les.
I have some more.
Jessica, do you want one?
Okay, so I have to fix the on, I missed the in there. And the school provides a systematic process for intervention and extension. What sets Lakeland apart? Parents and families as partners. Students are our number one priority. Our commitment to student success. Our motivation to reach beyond high expectations. We lead by example. Our strong community partnerships, our dedicated and invested staff, and that our schools reflect the conservative values of our community. Our mission statement, so some things in red. The administrative team, and this will have to go to the board, so I'll leave it on here until we take it to the school board, but they suggested an edit just to kind of make this even more concise than it was with Lakeland Joint School District's daily mission is to maximize student growth every day in all environments. Taking out the and ensure that. I will take that to the board, and once they give us the go-ahead, we'll make that little tweak. Our vision stayed the same, and then our core beliefs. Student learning is the priority of the school district. Each student is a valued individual with unique needs. All students can learn at high levels. Parents and guardians are the first and primary teachers. Their active collaborative partnership with educators is vital to their child's academic success. Parents and guardians and staff work together to support students in becoming confident, self-directed, lifelong learners and responsible citizens. Staff model and encourage the development of positive character traits such as honesty, responsibility, and respect. Our district provides a safe and secure environment for all students, and our district employees are essential to the success of the school district. So these are the areas that we're going to write goals around and activities. So at the last meeting we got through curriculum. So goal 1 is that the staff will teach the district approved curriculum aligned with the Idaho content standards. And then these were the activities that we came up with. And then how we'll measure how we're doing. So there was language in here about a district curriculum advisory council or subject area committees. We don't currently have these two entities, and so that'll be something that we're just going to have to discuss as to whether or not we want to bring those back or whether or not we leave them off.
What's the difference between the district curriculum advisory and the curriculum committee?
Way back in the day when I very first started in the district, we had the subject area committee. So when we adopted a new textbook for math, we would have people volunteer to participate in that subject area committee, and we do all of the work around reviewing lots of textbooks, piloting some things, and then that recommendation went to a DCAC, District Curriculum Advisory Council, where we'd have to run our recommendation through them, and then they took it to the board. And so it was kind of a long, cumbersome process, and the District Curriculum Advisory Council really didn't do anything more than hear the recommendation and then take it to the board. And so we moved away from doing it that way, and we just have our subject area committees working with the assistant superintendent, and then the assistant superintendent and representatives from the committee then take the recommendation to the board. So it's just a more direct pathway, which is how I would recommend that we continue to work. But there was some language in here about those two, and so I didn't want to just make the assumption that we were moving away from it. Goal 2, all schools will implement robust multi-tiered systems of support to meet the needs of all students. And these are the activities. We do MTSS really well right now at the elementary level. We've got pretty solid plans started at the middle school level, and we're starting to work at the high school level. So this is a work in progress.
I liked that a couple board meetings ago, someone, was it the board meeting where it would, retention, like at middle school retention?
Oh, the pathway to promotion.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was really good.
It was really good. And I think that way it will help us help our kids to be the best they can be. We can hold them accountable for making sure that they're achieving what we need them to achieve. So, and then metrics, so our 4-year plans, which is in statute, every student has to, 8th grader creates the 4-year plan and then it follows them through their 4 years of high school. The statute also requires that they're reviewed annually by the students and the parents to make sure that the courses that they're selecting align with what their plan is. So in 8th grade, if I've got a student who knows they're going to be a welder when they grow up, their plan would incorporate classes that are going to lead them into K-Tech and then into that welding, where a student who wants to be a doctor is going to have a different looking plan and the type with regard to the types of classes that they'll take. And then of course, as an 8th grader, you may think you know what you want to be when you grow up, you know, and that changes, and so that's why it has to be annually reviewed. And then we'll have our syllabi, feedback, and then student growth. And then the third goal, professional development opportunities will be provided to all district staff. So in the 2015, the language here was the professional development committee, and we don't currently have a committee. Right now it's the district leadership team and the administration team. We'll review goals and activities of the plan and offer classes to personnel that assist in implementing the plan. When we talked, the last meeting, we talked a lot about making sure that when we're talking especially about professional development, that we're talking about the entire district staff receiving professional development, so that whatever it is that is their responsibility, they're able to do it to the very best of their ability. So that's why I struck out teachers and paraprofessionals, and added the word staff. And then directors, so our principals oversee our schools, but our directors oversee our departments. So we have a director of facilities and the HR director, child nutrition director. So if we're truly talking about all staff, then the directors need to be part of that conversation as we're developing plans. And then the metrics. And then goal 4 is technology. We spend a lot of time talking about this. Will be used to enhance learning for students. We've really talked about trying to scale back the amount of time that kids are on computers, and really looking at obviously our K2 kids don't need to be on them very much at all, although our monthly literacy assessment is on the computer, so they do need that practice just to be able to manipulate the computer so they can show what they know on the test. But when we talk to the high school students, they'll tell you they want less. They want actual books. They don't want to have to read a textbook from a Chromebook. So. So those were the activities we came up with, and then the metric, and metric 3, and the old one was no longer applicable, so that was whatever, which that one was graduation requirements for the class of 2013 and beyond will require students to demonstrate computer literacy through computer apps, and that's no longer necessary. Kids are, by the time they get to high school, are very well versed in how to use Google Docs and Sheets and all of that. So, and then we stopped when we got to facilities. So I am. So if we want to, I guess the best way to do this, I think we found last time, was just to go through the document. I'm going to go back up to this part because as we go through this, if we find goals that align with parent rights, we just want to mark that that's where that's going to go. Safety, financial responsibility, and the curriculum we've done. So, and we actually talked about, before we get to facilities even. So the next, on page 9, that's how far we got. To instruction, and I think we talked about instruction fitting kind of into curriculum when we were discussing, and so we have the graduation expectations and the outcome-based measures under instruction. So we have to go through that to see if we want to add those goals in under curriculum and make sure that we feel like it fits under curriculum. And if we don't feel like it fits well, then we need to talk about where we want to put it, or if we want to create another subset, I guess. So, goal number 1, all Lakeland School District graduates will be productive citizens who are college and career ready. Still important. Okay. The graduation requirements will be reviewed on an ongoing basis to ensure all students are required to complete a rigorous, that should be course of study, not core of study.
Core of study.
The graduation requirements are actually outlined in IDAPA for us. Those are the minimum requirements. We can be more rigorous, but is everybody okay with leaving that one in there?
Yep.
Okay. Schools will continually review programs to meet the needs of all students.
Lisa, do you want to reference the policy that addresses graduation? You don't want any citing? Okay.
I mean, that's not what the strategic plan is, how it's designed, and we can do whatever we want, but historically we haven't done that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if parents are looking at it, then the link is right if they were pulled into it. So if they didn't know what graduation requirements were. But
does this cite IDAPA? Like what we're looking at here?
you could cite IDAP, or you could just put the policy number.
So our policy is aligned with the IDAPA
Yeah.
rule. So if we had our policy in there, down at the bottom, it would tell you which IDAPA rule it's following.
I mean, if we've never done that, it's just a suggestion, like if somebody was looking at this
Yeah.
digitally and didn't know what their requirements are.
Does this follow the IDAPA?
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, number one specifically is that one comes right out of IDAPA. So IDAPA tells us that we have to have 46 credits to graduate from high school, and then a certain number of them, like you have to have 8 ELA credits, you have to have 1 speech credit, you have to have 6 math credits. It lists it all out, and that's what we have in our policy is the actual graduation requirements that the state has adopted. Do you think it would be helpful in this document? I don't know how many people are actually gonna
I don't know.
spend time in the strategic plan, but would it be helpful, do you think, to have a link to the policy that pertains to that?
I guess where my question was coming from is not knowing this document and not really knowing like what, like we have to meet the requirements, right? The state requirements and IDAPA. but how much of this is over and above IDAPA, right? I think just kind of calling out like where we're putting additional measures in for success of the kids versus what the state requires
state's
was kind of where I was going with it. I don't know if it fits in here. It was just for my own personal understanding, I guess.
Well, and there's probably times much earlier in the document too that we, if we're going to state it here, we could have stated it at other times as well.
Am I just muddy the
Whatever.
waters? That's just something that stands out to me of like, does a parent know? And if they happen to look at this, would they even know where to look? Like where, you know,
What is that standard?
what
or
are
that?
the requirements for graduation?
I mean, if it's not a big deal, I don't think it is a problem, it'd be a problem to put it as a link, because there may be some parents that just, yeah, it would be easier than try to dig around in the school district stuff to try to find it.
And if people don't go to the strategic plan and that makes it difficult to keep us updated, just a link on the website.
A link on the website to what?
IDAPA, like if parents want to know what the state requirements are? Or do we have what our requirements are to graduate?
Yeah.
I don't have high schoolers, so
yeah,
I'm not that far down the path.
It's listed out.
Okay.
Exactly
It is.
what you have to take.
Okay.
And it comes from the
And the way
IDAPA
we
rule.
have it listed would be way easier than trying to navigate.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, IDAPA's not easy to
Yeah.
find anything, so.
I'm
listed as
in them all the
policy.
time. Okay.
It's 2700 P.
I don't see why that would be bad. I mean, I'm thinking as a parent, if I was to take the time to get to this point, to read this plan, I probably am like, okay, what are the requirements? I mean,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
The cross-reference
Yeah.
between the two.
yeah. I mean, if I was going through all this work to go through here, they might want
They
that
might
at
want
that
that.
point.
Okay, so I made that note and I will put that in there.
You're so funny if they're going through all this work.
Okay,
One less
so,
call to you.
the next one is schools will continually review programs to meet the needs of all students.
Do we do that now?
That's a very vague
Yeah.
statement. So I'm just thinking, are we talking about the master schedule at the high school level? Are we talking about the MTSS program, which we already talked about?
Read it again.
Schools will continually review programs to meet the needs of all students. I mean, we
I mean,
definitely
if-
addressed it under MTSS, but.
If the graduation requirements are being reviewed, you would think that that's kind of part of it, you know, I mean, if they're, we have to have stuff in place for them to be able to graduate.
Well, and that 4-year plan that the counselors go over and meet with the kids on. And I think we do have lots of provisions to ensure that's happening, but it's different depending on which grade you're in.
Right, I guess if we were gonna have a metric to tell us if we were doing this, what would that be?
We'd have to list what that looks like at elementary versus middle school versus high school, because it looks different depending on the.
But if we're talking about the goal, the specific goal that all Lakeland School District graduates will be productive, that
Then it would be high school.
talks to me
Yeah.
that it's
Secondary?
looking more at,
This is more
high
for
school.
me, it's like, it's looking at the master schedule to ensure that it's student-centered and that we have the courses and the programs that
We're offering everything to ensure they can graduate.
students need.
yeah,
Yeah.
that we have speech classes, that we have.
Mhm. So is
Well,
there a
and
better way to
just-
say it?
Maybe it's course offerings and programs to meet the needs of all
Yeah.
students.
So add that, that's
I like
better,
that better.
that's more clear.
You know, if your brain goes to master schedule, that's kind of what we're,
Okay. So this is actually a repeat of what's under curriculum with regard to the multi-tiered systems of support that I read from up above. we need it in both places?
I don't think so.
So are you okay if we take that one out? the
Number
third
3.
one?
Mm-hmm.
So this is under curriculum already.
Okay.
Strategies to reduce classroom disruptions will be implemented in each building, which we do. That's talking about how often are we having assemblies where you're pulling kids out of classes. How often do principals make announcements in the middle of class time, which is disruptive to learning. And then also just when we have student behaviors that are disruptive, how do we deal with those? So those are all, that's all part of that. Each building will develop and implement a plan that emphasizes reading instruction at all levels and provides intervention and remediation for students below grade level. Everybody okay with that one? Daily class schedules will be reviewed to optimize instructional time, which we do every year, looking at all buildings, how we're using our instructional time. So our metric, and so what's important to me is that when we look at how we're going to assess whether or not we're meeting the goal, these metrics need to make sense, and if they don't, then we need to talk about them. So the first one is student scores on national, state, and local assessments will be compared to building, state, and national norms.
What does building mean?
The
Each school.
Oh, each school.
Can we put we can put instead of building individual schools, if that's more clear. Student progress will be monitored in the core areas of reading, math, and language using appropriate progress monitoring tools. So the language usage, that was aligned to the old ISAT. We used to, when we did the old ISAT, those were the 3 tests that we took: English, our reading, math, and then language usage. We don't take a language usage assessment anymore. It's reading, math, and science are the 3 assessments that we take. So are you okay if we take the language usage out and change that to science? Okay.
So we don't do any ELA
It's reading.
progress monitoring? It's okay.
Reading, yeah.
Okay.
It's not grammar. That language usage was specifically grammar.
Gotcha, okay.
And then surveys and reports will be used to determine student, parental, and alumni views. I would ask that we could not, I would take alumni views out of that, simply because once the kids leave the school, we don't have any way of giving them a survey to take. They're hard to catch up with. But the students and parents are actually, that's a federal requirement that we do every year as part of because we get Title I dollars from the federal government. So there'll be and you've done that for the last couple of years, you get a link to a survey. This year we get to do our own. In the past we've had to give the one that came from Cognia. So we'll get to make sure the questions that we're asking actually help us with what we're doing in Lakeland. And then our students are also surveyed. That's part of that requirement.
Can parents see the surveys that the students get?
Yeah, we talked about, the law says that if we're asking any questions about, anything that has to do with life outside the school, basically, parents have to give permission. If we're asking about mental health types of things, parents have to give permission. But if we're just asking questions about, what's your favorite subject in school, do you feel safe when you're at school, those kinds of things, we don't have to ask permission. But we did talk about posting, because the principals all want to use the same survey, so all the elementary principals want to use the same survey, and then the middle school and then high school. So we did talk about putting those links on the district website so parents can see what's being asked. But they will be questions that are designed to help us know if, when kids are at school, they feel like we've created an environment where they feel safe so they can focus on learning. What do they like best about the school? And what would they like to see us change, maybe? Sometimes they have some really good ideas. Sometimes they would like us to have more recess. So
I just think as a parent, I would be interested in asking my child or having a conversation with them about those questions.
Yep. Yeah. No, we talked about that we would post those, so parents had an option or opportunity to look at it. I could even, when we send out the parent survey links, I could send a Skylert out to all parents and say, here are the links to the surveys we're going to ask the kids, so that you could click on them and see them, rather than maybe having people go to the website and search for it.
Okay.
I'm going to make myself a note. Okay, everybody good? We can go on to goal 2.
Mm-hmm.
Goal 2, a minimum of 95% of all students completing 3rd grade will read at or above grade level. So when we did this last, we actually had students as part of the long range or the strategic planning, and that number had been 90, and the students felt like, if we're saying that our goal is 100, but 100 is impossible to get to, maybe we should increase it to 95%. The research says that we should be striving for 85% of our kids, because when you look at, they call it it's a pyramid, but like 85% of your students should be able to access just regular classroom instruction and learn what they need to learn and show proficiency on it. And then you have about 10% in that tier 2 where they might need a little bit more time, a little bit more practice. So maybe they go to Title I for reading assistance in addition to what they get in the classroom. And then you have just a small percentage, like 5-ish% in your tier 3. They changed it. It used to be it's backwards in my head, but tier 3, and those are your kiddos who are on IEPs, who require maybe specially designed instruction, so it takes them much longer to acquire those grade level skills. But our goal truly is that 100% of our kids are going to be strong readers. The reality is that kids learn at different rates, and so 100% is challenging when you're putting an end point, like at the end of 3rd grade. So what are you?
Our goal is to make sure all kids are making gains in the right areas, and that we're providing explicit instruction in the areas that they're showing weaknesses in, so we can close that gap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is your comfort level with regard to, like, what would you like to see that percentage be?
I would defer to you guys as experts who obviously want to have an obtainable goal.
Mm-hmm. Because what happens if there's one school that has, there's probably some schools that have more IEP kids than other schools, and what if you have a school that's like got a fair amount of IEP kids that are not going to attain that goal? I don't know. I mean, I think 95 is great, but I don't know how realistic that is.
I would tell you, not very.
I mean, I just know, I read with my, Greens Ferry Elementary, I do reading with those first graders, and there's some of them that are just speeding through, and then there's others that the first quarter sight words they still don't know. I mean, this is only first grade, but still, it's just like,
What does the goal actually say?
95% of them are reading at grade level by the end of third grade. I feel like 85 is, I mean, that's nationally what the expectation is, but 85 always, to me, felt like we were setting the bar low.
so what happens if we don't set that 95%? I mean,
We
if
could
don't
set
make
it at 95.
No, but I mean,
and
what if we
strive.
if we don't make that 95% goal, there's no like,
There's no punishment
No,
or
there's
anything for it.
just-
It's just, if we're not hitting it, then we're constantly looking at how do we improve this.
Mhm.
And to your point, sometimes we have a group of kids go through the district where, in a grade level, they're just exceptionally capable as a group and high achieving, and so that we might hit it that year, and then we'll have another year where we have a much higher group of kids on an IEP, and we definitely have those pockets, and so
Well, and I
it
would just say
changes year over
developmentally
year.
specific to reading too is, I mean, think about it, our brains were designed to learn how to read. I mean, that's not, so it's kind of a foreign concept. So we have a lot of kids who, there isn't anything wrong, their acquisition is appropriate, it just takes a little bit longer. And then if you add in the lack of exposure to vocabulary or speech or those kind of things, then there's a little bit more of a delay. They eventually get there. It's just not within that box of a time frame. So that's the hard part is I think we do a really good job, but not everybody gets to that point at the exact same time.
Yeah, and we don't give up at the end of third grade either. So
No.
if we haven't hit it by then, we keep working with it. So I'm not opposed to setting the bar high. I mean, we can certainly work toward it, but 95% would be really hard to consistently reach.
but like you said, then it's like, let's reevaluate and see what's happening so that we can bring those kids up.
Keep moving. Yep,
If we set it too low, then it's kind of like, oh, well, we hit it, so.
exactly.
We're good enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
So I think it's
I
better
mean,
to
and
have it.
ultimately the goal is 100% of our
Yeah.
kids. I mean,
Yeah.
we want every kid reading at grade level. Yeah.
I don't know, let's keep 95.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so our activities are intervention and remediation will be provided for students below grade level, which we definitely are doing. Early childhood education programs will be investigated and implemented as determined appropriate. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know how we measure that.
I mean, if there's no TK programs, how are we gonna, because early childhood education, I would say would be like the pre-K.
Yeah.
Some schools have pre-K, which would be.
Right, but our pre-K is a special education classroom. It's not even a typical pre-K. So that's the only if we're talking before kindergarten, that's the only early childhood program that we have. But if we're talking kindergarten, first grade, well, it wouldn't be that because it says investigated and implemented as determined appropriate, and we cannot use, other than the pre-K special education, we cannot use district dollars to support instructing anybody younger than kindergarten because those dollars are specifically for public school students. So I'm not sure what this goal or this activity is actually asking us to do that we could do. So
I agree. Early childhood education is more, in my mind, like pre-K.
Preschool.
Yeah.
Northwest Fine Arts Academy.
Yeah, I think, yeah, preschool, pre-K.
Yeah.
what do we want to do about this one?
chop it?
If it's not relative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we could put here, Lynn, instead of, this specifically says early childhood education programs will be investigated and implemented as determined appropriate. We cannot use district funds for that, so I'm not sure what this was even, in 2015, what it was
What number are you
asking us
on?
to do. We're on goal 2 under instruction, number 2.
I mean, I just wonder if this was, whoever wrote it didn't, I mean, in my mind, the leap I would take is their,
Maybe they're talking instructional programs instead of student type programs, I guess. I'd
I think
rather,
they're talking about like early childhood, Head Start, those kind of things, because when you look at 3, it says a plan to emphasize the importance of parents reading to children. I think it's just that the district is engaging in those pre-K strategies that will bolster,
bolster.
what did I say, bolster?
Bolster.
I'm tired. More on level starting in kindergarten. So I think this is just a focus of all that prerequisite support. So
Right, but it
vocabulary
says-
teaching.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
Mhm.
because if we talk about like our instructional programs for early childhood in our K2 classrooms, that makes more sense to me than Head Start or pre-K, because
Well, if you
I think it's just that it's the preparation for coming into kindergarten that, you're going over your number sense, and the kids have a sense of letter sounds, they know how to write their name, like you're just preparing for some of those pieces.
But
and lots of
number
access to
3 says
vocabulary.
that. If you read number
Right.
3.
right. So I guess I would suggest that we either identify in number 2 developmentally appropriate phonemic awareness and phonics programs instead of it being so vague, or if it truly is Head Start and pre-K,
Then note that.
then
Say it.
but we wouldn't be investigating and implementing those things because we're not in charge of Head Start.
I think just scratch it.
Okay, what does everybody else think?
I mean, the other thing is you could take a different route and just say, take it beyond. So if we're saying we're starting with kinder, we're gonna use explicit, systematic instruction to support foundational reading skills. Because that's what we're gonna do. So you could just start from kinder and not look at it as a before situation. It's just within our sphere of influence, these are the things we're going to do. Because we can't control, I mean, it's hard to put in a plan, the importance of children starting school ready to learn. Well, we have no way of controlling that. So it's not measurable, it's not, so within,
We could measure it, we could measure whether kids come to school ready to learn, but we can't
Control it.
control
Correct.
right, those numbers, right? I just think this is-
Understanding where kids are coming in, that's super important, but
I just think
Benchmarking.
if we're really saying that we want 95% of all of our students completing 3rd grade at or above grade level in reading, I feel like we need to say something about, because we're talking about instruction specifically, I feel like we need to talk about systematic explicit
Right, that's what I
instruction
think.
and phonemic awareness and phonics in grades K through 2.
I would agree.
okay.
Well, again, this was a template, so it's not that we should be adopting what was in it before.
Right, yeah, we
Right.
talked about that, yeah. Some of it just doesn't apply anymore. So I'm going to change the wording, and then I'll bring that to the next meeting. You guys can tell me if you like the way it is. So K-12.
But I wouldn't go to K-12 because we're talking about up to third
K2.
grade as the
K2.
goal. Oh, K2.
Sorry, I said
Okay.
K-12, I meant K2. I even wrote K2.
Or wouldn't it be K?
3, because
Three?
we're talking by the end
Because
of.
you've got the whole third grade year.
Right, instructionally in K2, it's really heavy focus on phonemic awareness and phonics. In grade 3, we're transitioning from that focus to word attack skills and multisyllabic words. So I'll put the third grade verbiage in there also, and then we can talk about whether you feel like makes sense. Okay. Number 3, a plan to emphasize the importance of parents reading to children will be developed and implemented. The importance of children starting school ready to learn will be emphasized.
Is that relevant?
I think the reading to children definitely, but I don't know how you're gonna,
You can't control it.
no.
Well, and are we doing that? Are we talking to parents of pre-K age kids?
Well, this could even be encouraging parents to be reading to their kids for kindergarten, for second grade too, I mean. But
That definitely happens. But where we get the biggest bang for our buck is working with those parents whose kids are still really little. And I used to do we called it Literacy for Little Ones, where once a month I would have our parents who have toddlers come in, and they would bring their 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds with them if the 5-year-old wasn't in kindergarten yet. And I would model for the parents how to read a book with kids, what kinds of questions you ask, how to get them interacting with the pictures. We'd have a poem, and I would take words, and instead of putting the word there, I'd put the picture there, just to start the kids understanding that each little segment is a word, and then they could read the special words, the pictures that they could recognize. And by the time they were done, the 5-year-olds who were graduating on to go to kindergarten the next year, there were definitely words that they were recognizing because we did that each month. But we started out with a really large group, and then just over the years it dwindled, and so until we just had like 1 or 2 kids coming, which so we stopped doing it. I think I know Kelsey and her crew meet with Head Start parents to talk about child find and some of those things for special education and things that parents can do with their kids. But if you feel like this is important to keep in here, then we just are going to have to come up with some routes to try to figure out how to get in front of the right parent group. I'm not sure what that will look like, but
Does the district have the bandwidth to do that and the resources?
I mean, I don't think this would be like an ongoing thing, but if we 2 or 3 times a year were able to get in front of a group somewhere, I just don't know where that group is other than Head Start, and those parents are already kind of dialed in just because they're identifying that they have kiddos who are struggling. I think the people we want to talk to are just your everyday families who have little people. We have when we grew up, some of us in the room who are older, I'm not talking to the 2 of you, I learned, we read a lot of nursery rhymes, and so I could recite all kinds of nursery rhymes. Kids come to school as a kindergartner, they've never heard a nursery rhyme, they don't know how to rhyme, because where parents don't know to do those playful things with words with kids, and so there is benefit for sure. The other thing that parents don't always recognize is that when kids come into kindergarten, there's up to like a 5 million word span between your kids who have the smallest amount of vocabulary to the kids who have this amazing vocabulary, and it really is all about how much you interact with your child, you know, and today so many kids are on phones or tablets or whatever, and so they're not getting that same level of interaction. So there's definitely information we could get out there. We would just have to get creative about how to do it.
This sounds important.
It is important.
Then we should leave it in there maybe,
Okay.
and just figure out how to edit it to reflect 2024, not 2013.
Right.
I think the second sentence though isn't, I mean, how do you make that an activity? You're making a statement, it's not an activity.
Right.
The plan is an activity,
Mhm.
but the second sentence is just a statement.
So I agree with you. So are you guys okay if we just don't, we can take the second sentence out, and then the plan, I will rework the language in the first sentence so that it indicates the plan to reach parents and some of the things we would share.
Mhm.
Okay. Number 4, transitional, developmental, accelerated, and other alternative methods for meeting student needs will be investigated and implemented where appropriate. So there, the example there was extended kindergarten, because this was written in half-day kindergarten time, and we now have full-day kindergarten. So that probably, I mean, we're doing that, so we could,
Mhm.
I think we could leave that in there. I think
Yeah.
we're constantly finding ways to accelerate kids who are able to be accelerated and provide remediation and intervention when we need to. Okay, so how are we measuring that goal of 95%? So appropriate progress monitoring tools, which we have, and then student scores on state and local assessments, which is the IRI for
Anywhere in there
K3.
you want to add the dyslexia component?
as a metric or under
Or the programs.
activities.
Either, I mean, I just feel like it's,
So instead of the transitional, developmental, accelerated, and other alternative methods for meeting student needs, we could change that language to discuss how we're going to use the dyslexia diagnostic information to ensure that all students are achieving at high levels in the area of reading. That's the data that we would use to actually do
It could be
this.
one of the 3 metrics and have an activity that addresses it.
If we
or
use the-
include it in the,
If we use a diagnostic, is that the one you're thinking of? The what we talked about with the elementary team, the benchmarks. Okay, so metric 3.
I just feel like it's hard to talk about academics and not address the dyslexia component of what we're doing, since that's a huge push, rightfully so.
especially when we're talking about reading.
Okay. Okay. 95% of students will meet the established curriculum benchmarks at the end of the year. Each building in the district will implement strategies to protect instructional time and maximize student-teacher contact, which we do. Strategies to reduce Student absences will be implemented at each building. This was obviously written prior to COVID. And we are,
I don't think that should be taken out though, because we are having to go back and really push for students to be in class, and we've had to make those policy changes to reflect that. So I think leaving that in is important.
okay. The staff will teach the district curriculum using adopted and supplemental. We need to change the language there. Adopted textbooks and approved supplemental materials. Remediation interventions will be provided to assist students. Curriculum benchmarks will be distributed to staff, students, and parents. Those are all on the report cards for at least K-5. So when you look at the K-5 report card, it'll say it can read 95 words per minute, or can add and subtract through 10 or 20, or those are the curriculum benchmarks. So elementary does that really well. I'm not sure that we have curriculum benchmarks that we actually have identified for secondary, because their instruction is based more on units and then of course assessments. So that's something we need to work on.
Well, and the middle school pathways. Could be used in that.
Yeah, I think what in my mind, when I'm thinking about curriculum benchmarks at the middle and high school, I think about the end of course assessments and at the end of first semester, what are the standards that we're expecting mastery of? So it shouldn't, I don't think it would be hard to pull those out by subject area. It's just not as readily available as the elementary. But that would be something if this is what we want this to be, that's work we have to do over the summer, because we would need to be able to provide that to the parents.
If we are able, if money and the board approves that we're able to go with that ELA assessment tool, then it's all standards based because it's criterion reference, so it would allow for that. So it's not, it's going to be rigorous, and it's our expected outcomes.
Right, but we would just have to be able to pull out what the benchmarks are by semester.
We would be able to, because it's all aligned that way.
Aren't benchmarks outlined in the syllabus for each class?
I don't think they have all of their standards identified in there. They definitely have some. So this would just be something that we need to work on this summer. I mean, I know the secondary teachers could tell you what they're doing, but the fact that it's distributed to students and parents, we need to get that part dialed in. Strategies for emphasizing parental responsibility and involvement will be implemented at each building. We better get that one. Strategies for timely home-school communications will be implemented at all levels, including best practices for using the parent component of Skyward. And maybe can we just put do we need to name it, or should we put learning management system so we don't have to change it every time it changes? Michelle?
Whatever you'd like to do.
But I feel like at elementary we don't use Skyward, they use Glass Dojo.
Well, I've had several complaints from parents about the various platforms that are used for communication in their minds. There's too many, and you have to kind of keep checking all the various ones to make sure you get all the information. So I knew we had Skyward, and I know we have Class Dojo, and I guess some teachers have their own. So I don't know if there's a way to streamline it so that all parents know that they're getting all information through this platform.
Okay.
Why would some teachers have their own when there's Dojo and Skyward?
I don't know.
Doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
I know that at one point, like most of our schools were using Class Dojo. I think there was one school that had been using another app. I can't remember now what it's
That's
called,
been a while and
but they
haven't.
have agreed. So all of the
I
elementary are
wonder
using
if-
Dojo.
They are, but I wonder if the confusion is like for student-led conferences, they use Seesaw because that's a different method for just.
Seesaw.
But it's not, they're not using it for it's just for student-led conferences because it's a scheduling app that none of the other apps have. But I would say then you have Google Classroom. Those are the 3 platforms. You have elementary 4 or 5, not everybody, but they use Google Classroom. I do know most of them include that in their syllabus. You have everyone else uses Class Dojo, but that's only K-5. And then high school uses obviously Skyward and Google Classroom
But they also use Remind.
for athletics, yeah.
Yeah, so. we
Well,
do-
and then there was also then we get text messages and we get emails. So I mean, I'm like, well, yeah, but we're over communicating. It's
Right.
not a good thing.
That's the Sky Alert part of Skyward. So.
That's really the only method of Skyward though, communication-wise, is it would be through a Skyward.
Mhm.
But then you have Class Dojo, and then you have Remind, so, for athletics.
Okay.
So you said learning management.
Management system, which is what Skyward is, but then we are using apps
Yeah.
like Class Dojo.
But yeah, if there's a title or a label to encompass it all, then definitely use that because I'm sure it'll change throughout the years. Hopefully not, but you never know.
Okay. Play around with that. Okay, so the metric, common district assessments, teacher input, and state scores will be used to determine the performance levels of all students. I don't think we use teacher input anymore. It's truly the raw data. So are you guys okay if we cross that part out? That just makes things a little bit more subjective than we want.
Yep.
Monitor usage reports for the district's computerized student management system.
What does that mean?
It's a very good question.
It's, all of the, like, Amplify Science, Amplify ELA, the digital components like iReady, the pathways, you can pull up a report to see how many teachers are accessing it, and then how many kids are accessing it.
This would be specific to Skyward, the student management system.
Well, we've never looked at a report of usage for Skyward.
Mm-mm.
You could look, I mean, if you're going back to learning management system, though, there is a report for Class Dojo that you could see, like, has it been used when we send out our school newsletters, it will tell you, how many people have read it. We don't know who, but it'll just tell you who's opened it.
Mhm.
You can see that. It's anonymous. You can't see the people, but you can just see how many people have accessed it.
Okay.
But we don't pull reports for Skyward.
Mm-hmm.
So is that important in here? What is our goal? 95% of students will meet the established curriculum benchmarks at the end of the year. So does
I
that
don't see
metric
that.
actually help us with that?
Mm-mm.
I don't think it ties back.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Classroom syllabus and instructional calendars will clearly define learning objectives and outcomes. ties back to what we were talking about with curriculum benchmarks, so that's probably important. And actually, if that's where we put those, if we just have the class, to your point, then those do go home to parents, so that would be an easy way to do that. Okay.
And if it's our metric that we're using to measure it, then it makes sense to make sure that those are included.
Exactly. Any other metric that we think might be helpful? One metric that we could look at when you're looking at number 1, each building in the district will implement strategies to protect instructional time and maximize student-teacher contact. At our elementary schools, our principals put together a building schedule that shows from this time to this time, grade 2 is doing reading, and then from this time to this time it's reading flex, and so you can look at the whole school on a very small little sheet to see how much time is spent in all of those content areas and whether or not we're maximizing instructional time. So we do have that capability to be able to pull that, and we could provide that to the board annually as we're talking about whether or not our kids are meeting benchmarks. I do think we have to go back to, are we actually doing a good job of using instructional time? So we could add that as a metric.
Yeah, monitoring the.
Whether or not we're maximizing our instruction time.
For all grades or just elementary?
The secondary is super easy because they have their master schedules that they just print off, but our elementary principals have to hand make theirs, but
I see.
They're available. Okay. The annual district dropout rate will be less than 2%. Instead of writing it that way, would this group be open to writing it in on the flip side, like what do we want our graduation rate to be district-wide? And the only reason I'm saying that is the way the state calculates the graduation rate, they look at, so this year's the graduating class of 2024, so they would look at the freshman class of 2020, and then how many freshmen were there, and of those freshmen, what percentage are graduating this year, walking across the stage. They look at the whole cohort. So if people leave between their freshman year and their senior year, and we don't have a document that parents have signed that indicate where the kids are going, they count as a dropout for us, even though they may not be. Because you could have a parent who pulls their kiddo out because they're moving to Arizona, and typically they sign a release of information that we get that once they get to the new school for their records. But if they don't ever request their records, we don't ever get that, and we don't know where they've gone. And so now they count as a dropout for us. So I would rather look at what percentage of kids who start this year as a senior in our 3 high schools, what percentage of those kids are graduating this year. Just so that it's super clear and we don't have this muddy way of calculating it.
I think that sounds good.
So if we're doing it that way, what percentage are we thinking for graduation?
What was our percentage last year?
Well, it's based on the state's calculation, so it looks, I would tell you that Lakeland High School graduated 100% of their seniors. Timberlake High School graduated 100% of their seniors. And Mountain View graduated all but, I think, 2 of theirs. last year. So I think we should write it high. If that's how we're gonna calculate it, truly, from the kids who start on the first day of school, what percentage graduate, I think it needs to be high. So I would say 98, 99.
I mean, we have 95% for reading, so why not just set the bar up? I mean, it should be at least 98 because this is less than 2%, so it's like, you flip it around, that's 98%.
Okay, so 98%. The annual district graduation rate.
What's the state's, like, goal or average for Idaho? Or
Well, based on the way the state calculates it, it was 81% for comprehensive high schools, and we were at 96%. And Mountain View was at 91% this year, and the state graduation rate for alternative was at 44.
Oh, wow.
Can we put in here as a metric to ensure that we're within the states? Because what you're saying is we're not going to ever match the states. Because if we're at 100% or 98%, we're not coming in under those with the state, which has been kind of a frustration for some people because they'll look at the state report card and we support in the board meeting, yes, we're doing this, but then the state report card does not reflect that. So if we can acknowledge the deficit somehow so that we are being transparent and honest that yes, 100% of our kids are graduating, just to kind of account for why it's not going to reflect that.
By saying how we're calculating it versus the difference between how we calculate it and the state calculates it?
Possibly. Or we don't say 98% so that we can at least come in above and at least we're still meeting what the state's saying. Does that make sense?
No.
So what you said was 93%, I think, is where we came in, or 96%?
I think we were around 96% this year.
Okay, so if we say 95%, then we're coming in 1% above the state's requirement, but we know that we're actually coming in at 100.
Well, 96 isn't the state's requirement. That's where we actually were.
But
the state's calculation.
Calculation. Gotcha.
It's just something to consider because it will be something that because there are a lot of people that do monitor that state report card and monitor what comes out in the board meetings and they don't always match.
Right. It's going to be different.
Can we, at the, in whatever report is, say, 100% of our seniors for 23, 24 graduated, and then somehow have it from freshman
the
to
cohort.
from freshman to senior, this is the percentage, not knowing how many have left without, can that
So
be-
showing both.
That's totally fine.
Because I actually think that might help the community have a better understanding of why we're talking about how many of our kids are graduating. And I mean, 96% when you look at 81% for the state is really great, but
Right.
it wasn't accurate because we actually have
It was
100%
right.
our seniors.
Right.
So yeah, so we can do that. So 98% of our current seniors will graduate on time, and then in looking at the cohort model, our goal would be that 95% or greater are
Do you want to say in
graduating.
a 4-year cohort?
Yeah. So we'll have the two different measurements in the same goal. And I can put as measured by the state or calculated by the state,
Yeah.
just so they know that they're looking at two different things. Okay. Okay, so activities around graduation rate. Numerous alternative educational programs will be offered. So we have the alternative school, summer school, online or other forms of distance education courses, and then dual credit.
Do we have other forms of distance
We have-
education courses?
We have IDLA available too.
That's online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if kids fail a class and they have to repeat it, but they want to keep, they don't want to put that in their schedule for next year, they can take the IDLA course.
Oh, I'm just,
this summer.
no, I know what IDLA is. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that is also, because we're saying online or other forms of distance education courses. Do we offer other
Oh.
forms of distance education courses? Because
I mean-
IDLA is online, our Play-Doh stuff is online. What do
But
we
we have-
offer that isn't an online type distance course?
Summer school. If we're talking about credit recovery.
I know, but we've already
Yeah.
listed that as an alter. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think these are
we
the,
could just say
these are the four
online.
areas. Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
Just online
So,
options. Is that what? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I was not
Yeah,
understanding
fine.
where you were going with that.
That's fine. I just
but in respect to these these activities are supporting a low dropout rate, not a high graduation rate.
So we have to flip that a little bit.
Right, so I would think, credit recovery courses are supported, or, something to let everyone know that we're gonna provide the kids, the students, every opportunity to earn what they need to earn to walk across that stage. Not keeping them from dropping out, so to speak.
Student retention.
Mhm. But I know right now we're emphasizing a lot on credit recovery, so.
But I mean, IDLA is also used for, so like all three of my children were super involved, and so in order for them to fit everything in, because they wanted to have band plus their workout plus the, leadership, they had to, from freshman year on, they had to take summer school through IDLA in order to meet all the requirements, so that during the school year they could have some of those extra electives. So it's not just credit recovery.
Yep. Katie did the same thing.
Educational programs offered to support active schedules. I mean,
Or diverse schedules, or, yeah.
What'd you say?
I said diverse
Diverse.
schedules, or,
I do like that because then it's if they're recovering or if they're
right.
well, 'cause then
wanting
you have,
additional.
You have K-Tech situations. I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons why,
Okay,
not just credit recovery, that you would utilize that program.
K-Tech is excellent to have on here too, and it's not because it
On
wasn't.
online, so back in the day when we had advanced opportunities, fast forward, you could also use your advanced opportunities, and I think they called it overload courses. So if we did online option to support overload
But do you
courses.
feel like that's intuitive? Do people know what
What's,
that meant?
so what's a better way to say that? Online
I don't-
options to support,
I liked what Lynn said, the diverse schedules.
okay. Diverse student. course
Aren't there also
schedules.
kids that are doing online school because they're just not fitting in at school, so they're doing online homeschool through the school system? No?
We have, Mountain View has an online component for Mountain View, but not for any of our other schools. So we did away with that. We didn't have enough interest to support that staffing it, so we had to do away with that. So right now I have credit recovery opportunities are provided, dual credit, online options to support diverse student course schedules, and K-Tech. Anything else? That we do right now?
thinking of?
Keeping kids engaged and
Is this a place where you talk about some dual enrollment situations? No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because depending on how much they're dual enrolled,
Right.
well, you can't graduate from Lakeland High School or Timberlake High School if you're not enrolled full-time as a senior.
Okay.
How about support from college and career readiness?
That's a good one.
that could actually be some of our metrics. The stuff that our college and career advisors do.
I
Yeah,
think
there's
that we have that in our SIP plan too.
Right. So we're already measuring it, so that's good.
Right.
It's nice to have those metrics that we're already doing so that we're not having to add more.
Yep, I agree.
We can get rid of transition plan or programs, and then supplemental education opportunities will be offered. We can get rid of that, but I do think that we keep in here, it says parental involvement activities, but parent-teacher conferences, that probably needs to be in here just as an opportunity for
I mean,
conversations.
Both buildings do monthly newsletters. They both have active social media accounts to keep parents informed.
So consistent communication with parents regarding the ongoing progress and opportunities for their students.
Also annually meeting with the students regarding their 4-year plan, counseling meetings.
And that's a good measurable.
Because that's where they talk about you're behind by a credit, or how we're gonna fix that.
Well, or what grants or scholarships or, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's a lot on that one. All right, so we have 8 minutes to see if we can get through. There's
There's only one metric.
I think it still goes back to this one.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, there is only one metric, okay. A uniform method for tracking the dropout rate for each class will be utilized, so we'll track the graduation rate. We can track,
To be proactive, Lisa, some of those outcome measures, I mean, would it be worthwhile, because we could do this on some of the things that we do on the SIP, in addition to graduation rates, like, any of those certifications, CTE certifications, any of that kind of stuff, would we put as a metric here?
I don't know if that has anything to do with whether they graduate or not.
I mean,
I think keeping kids engaged by providing other
Yeah.
activities beyond just classroom
Academics.
curriculum.
So,
Because that keeps kids.
we could track
It
what
literally keeps
percentage,
kids in school.
what percentage of kids participate in extracurricular activities.
yeah, I just think all of those things because that bolsters.
Not boisters.
Graduation rates.
Very true. Okay. Okay, goal 5. Lakeland Joint School District students will be above state and national averages on assessments. Activities, problem solving and critical thinking skills will be a focus across all content areas. Test preparation materials will be available for college entrance tests. And then each school will implement a plan to eliminate testing variables that negatively impact student performance. Any changes with any of those or the metric?
What do they mean by number 3?
So testing variables. So making sure that your testing environment is conducive to test taking, so
Okay.
quiet, good lighting. Some kids, however, don't do well in a really quiet environment, and so we can modify their testing environment so it fits them. So some kids like to listen to music, so it's just knowing each of your kids. We make sure at the elementary level that we're feeding the kids, and there's and even our high schools, they like Lakeland High School does a big pancake breakfast for the kids on the days that they're doing ISET, so they eat before they test. We communicate with the parents, so parents know when the testing dates are, and we ask them, can you make sure that today your kid, that they go to bed
Good night's
at a
sleep.
decent hour and get a good night's sleep, that they have a breakfast before they come to school. That's some of those testing variables. Everybody okay with those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have 3 minutes, so this is probably a good stopping point. So I will add these. Okay, so the question I have though for the team is, do these fit under curriculum, or do we need to add a 6th category and have instruction as a separate category? Because we are talking about, it's really student achievement is what we talked about specifically. So maybe that's what we call it, student achievement
Instead of instruction.
instead of instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I will add, this will be, so we will have 6 subjects. And then I'll add these to this document based on my notes, and then when I come back, I'll just check in and make sure that you feel like that captures what we talked about. So,
Want to stop recording?
I'm not logged in. Yes. I will look at the calendar and try to find a date in the next couple of weeks for us to come back together so we can keep working on this and get this document dialed in before school's out this year. So I will send out an invite. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Lisa.